There are moments in life when effort alone is not enough. You work hard, you plan carefully, you do your best, and still doors remain closed. In those moments, prayer is not a last resort. It is the highest authority. Prayer is where limitations end and divine intervention begins. This prayer is not about chasing money. It is about alignment. When your heart aligns with God's will, provision follows purpose. Financial breakthrough is never just about increase. It is about order, wisdom, and trust. God does not simply want to bless your hands. He wants to guide your decisions. Many people pray briefly and expect lasting change, but transformation requires depth. A focused, intentional prayer creates space for clarity. In prayer, distractions fall away. Fear loses its grip. The mind becomes quiet enough to hear direction. That is where change begins, not in urgency, but in surrender. This prayer shifts your focus from lack to source. When you stop asking how and start trusting who, anxiety fades. God is not limited by economy, background, or timing. What feels delayed to you is often being prepared. Prayer does not rush God. It prepares you. Financial struggle is rarely only about money. It often reveals patterns, fear of loss, habits of scarcity, decisions rooted in pressure rather than wisdom. Prayer brings these to light, not to condemn, but to heal. God corrects because He cares. He redirects because He sees further. As you pray, perspective changes. You begin to see opportunities instead of obstacles. Discipline replaces impulse. Wisdom replaces haste. God often answers financial prayers not by sudden windfalls, but by sharpening discernment. One right decision can change everything. Prayer also breaks unseen barriers. There are burdens you did not create but inherited, mindsets, limitations, cycles of lack. Prayer invites God to intervene beyond effort. What generations struggled with can end with one surrendered heart. In this prayer, gratitude becomes powerful. Thanking God before results appear is an act of faith. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere. It acknowledges trust before evidence. God responds to hearts that believe beyond sight. This prayer is not about convincing God. It is about positioning yourself. God's willingness is constant. Prayer aligns your heart with His timing. When alignment occurs, provision flows naturally. What once felt forced begins to move with ease. Fear often blocks blessing. Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of not having enough. Prayer replaces fear with assurance. God does not give peace after provision. He gives peace before it. Peace becomes the foundation for progress. During this prayer, clarity replaces confusion. You begin to sense what to release and what to pursue. Some doors must close for better ones to open. Prayer gives courage to walk away from what drains and patience to wait for what sustains. This prayer also renews trust. Trust that God sees your effort. Trust that He knows your needs. Trust that He is not late. When trust is restored, stress loses power. Decisions become calm. Focus returns. Financial future is not changed overnight, but direction can change in a moment. One prayer can mark the end of panic and the beginning of peace. One prayer can reset priorities and invite wisdom into every step forward. God does not promise wealth without responsibility. He promises provision with purpose. When your heart seeks alignment, He ensures sufficiency. When your motive is stewardship, He provides increase. This prayer invites God into every detail: income, spending, planning, opportunity. Nothing is too small or too large for Him. When God is invited fully, nothing remains ordinary. As you pray, expect guidance more than guarantees. Expect wisdom more than shortcuts. Expect peace more than pressure. These are signs of real breakthrough. Your financial future is not determined by yesterday's struggle. It is shaped by today's alignment. Prayer positions you for decisions that compound over time. What begins in surrender grows into stability. This 30-minute prayer is not magic. It is movement. Movement from fear to faith, from scarcity to trust, from confusion to clarity. And when that shift happens, change is no longer distant. It is already underway. Stay still. Stay focused. Stay open. God is working even now. Prayer is not a ritual performed out of habit. It is a spiritual alignment that positions the heart, the mind, and the future toward God's order. When prayer is centered on finances, it is not about asking for money alone. It is about inviting God's wisdom, authority, and direction into an area of life that deeply affects peace, purpose, and stability. Financial transformation begins when the heart is realigned before circumstances ever change. Many financial struggles persist not because of lack of effort, but because of misalignment. Prayer brings clarity where confusion has ruled. It exposes unhealthy patterns, impulsive decisions, and misplaced trust. In prayer, the heart becomes sensitive to correction, instruction, and restraint. God does not only change situations, He changes understanding, and understanding changes behavior. When prayer becomes intentional and focused, it shifts financial thinking from fear to faith. Fear-driven decisions often lead to pressure, shortcuts, and regret. Faith-driven decisions produce patience, discipline, and long-term growth. Prayer replaces panic with perspective. It reminds the heart that provision does not come from chance, people, or systems alone, but from God who directs every source. Prayer also restores peace to financial pressure. Anxiety clouds judgment. Stress narrows vision, but prayer quiets the noise and restores balance. When peace is restored, decisions improve. God's guidance is often subtle, but it becomes clearer when the heart is calm. Prayer creates space for discernment, knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to let go. Financial prayer is not about convincing God to bless recklessness. It is about surrendering control and acknowledging dependence. When control is released, trust grows. Trust allows God to guide spending, saving, giving, and planning with wisdom rather than impulse. Prayer aligns desires with purpose, ensuring that financial growth does not damage character. Prayer reshapes motivation. Instead of chasing wealth for status, comparison, or security, prayer redefines prosperity as stewardship. Money becomes a tool, not a master. Prayer teaches responsibility, not entitlement. It shifts the focus from accumulation to alignment, using resources in ways that honor God and benefit others. Consistency in prayer produces consistency in action. When prayer becomes daily, discipline follows. Habits begin to change. Small adjustments lead to lasting results. God often works through process rather than instant change. Prayer strengthens patience to trust that process without giving up prematurely. Prayer also exposes hidden limitations in thinking. Some financial struggles are rooted in beliefs formed by past experiences, fear of lack, or inherited mindsets. Prayer allows God to renew the mind. It replaces scarcity thinking with trust. Prayer that changes a financial future is not built on repetition alone. It is sustained by alignment between belief and action. Many people pray earnestly, yet remain stuck because prayer is treated as a substitute for responsibility rather than a foundation for it. True faith-driven prayer reshapes how decisions are made, how resources are handled, and how effort is applied. When prayer and obedience move together, transformation begins. Faith is not passive agreement with hopeful words. It is active trust expressed through choices. When someone prays for provision but continues patterns that contradict wisdom, the prayer lacks alignment. Prayer opens the heart to direction, but obedience activates that direction. God often answers financial prayers by giving clarity, discipline, and opportunity rather than instant relief. Recognizing this requires spiritual maturity. Prayer sharpens awareness. It reveals habits that must change and priorities that need adjustment. In moments of sincere prayer, conviction often surfaces quietly. It may highlight waste, impulsive decisions, fear-driven choices, or lack of planning. These insights are not condemnation, they are guidance. Ignoring them weakens prayer's impact. Responding to them strengthens it. Persistence matters. Financial pressure rarely disappears instantly. Prayer that changes the future is not desperate once and forgotten later. It is consistent and focused. Persistence does not mean anxiety-driven repetition, but steady trust. Each prayer reinforces reliance and resists discouragement. Over time, persistence builds endurance and clarity. Prayer also confronts mindset. Many financial struggles are sustained by limiting beliefs, fear of lack, unworthiness, or constant comparison. Prayer renews perspective. It replaces scarcity thinking with stewardship thinking. Money is no longer seen only as survival, but as responsibility. This shift influences how income is managed, how risks are taken, and how generosity is practiced. Obedience often involves preparation before provision. Prayer may lead to learning new skills, seeking counsel, creating structure, or exercising patience. These steps may not feel spiritual, but they are answers to prayer. God often prepares capacity before increasing supply. Without capacity, increase becomes burden rather than blessing. Faith-driven prayer also corrects entitlement. Prayer is not a demand, it is a partnership. It acknowledges dependence while accepting responsibility. This humility invites growth. It allows learning from mistakes instead of repeating them. It removes blame and replaces it with accountability. Consistent prayer reshapes the future not by magic, but by transformation. When prayer becomes a discipline rather than a last resort, it begins to realign the heart, the mind, and the decisions that shape financial direction. A changed financial future does not start with money. It starts with perspective. Prayer creates space for wisdom to replace impulse, patience to replace anxiety, and purpose to replace pressure. Many financial struggles are not only about lack of resources, but about lack of clarity. Prayer brings clarity by slowing the rush to react. It creates moments of stillness, where priorities are examined honestly. In that stillness, unhealthy patterns become visible, spending driven by insecurity, decisions influenced by comparison, or fear-based choices rooted in urgency. Prayer does not judge these patterns. It exposes them so they can be corrected. Consistency in prayer also builds discipline. Discipline is one of the most overlooked foundations of financial stability. Praying regularly trains the mind to delay gratification, to seek guidance before action, and to remain steady when emotions fluctuate. This steadiness directly impacts financial behavior. Decisions become intentional rather than reactive. Short-term comfort is no longer prioritized over long-term sustainability. Prayer also reshapes motivation. Many people pursue financial improvement driven by pressure, fear, or comparison. These motivations often lead to burnout or unethical shortcuts. Prayer refines desire. It shifts motivation from proving worth to stewarding responsibility. Money becomes a tool rather than a measure of identity. This shift protects the heart from destructive cycles and aligns effort with purpose. When prayer is practiced consistently, it strengthens trust. Trust reduces anxiety, and reduced anxiety improves decision-making. Financial anxiety often leads to rush choices, poor investments, unnecessary debt, or avoidance of responsibility. Prayer cultivates patience. Patience allows time for evaluation, learning, and planning. Over time, this patience compounds into better outcomes. Prayer also invites wisdom beyond personal experience. Financial growth requires learning, understanding habits, systems, and consequences. Prayer opens the heart to correction. It allows humility to replace pride. Being willing to learn, seek counsel, and adjust plans is essential for long-term financial health. Prayer nurtures this openness. Consistency in prayer reinforces gratitude. Gratitude changes how resources are viewed. Instead of focusing only on what is lacking, gratitude recognizes what is present. This recognition fosters stewardship. People care for what they appreciate. They manage resources more responsibly when they see them as entrusted rather than owned. Gratitude reduces waste and increases awareness. Prayer also strengthens resilience. Financial journeys include setbacks, unexpected expenses, delays, or losses. Without resilience, setbacks lead to discouragement or abandonment of effort. Prayer anchors hope beyond immediate results. It reminds the heart that progress is not erased by interruption. Resilience allows recovery rather than retreat. This message leads us to one clear truth. Transformation does not begin with money. It begins with alignment. When prayer shifts from desperation to trust, from fear to faith, and from asking alone to listening and obeying, the future begins to change. This prayer is not a formula, but a posture of the heart that invites God into decisions, habits, and priorities. As faith deepens, clarity follows. As obedience grows, provision finds its place. The change may not be instant, but it will be intentional. And over time, what once felt uncertain becomes ordered, what felt lacking becomes sufficient, and what felt impossible becomes testimony. When prayer shapes the heart, the future follows in a new direction.